Rama Bhadra Mahashvasa Raghuvira Niloptara Bodhasha Santataka Asmakam Raksham Kuro Shriyam Chame. O Lord Rama, great archer, valiant member of the Raghu clan, best among kings, slayer of evil, please grant me prosperity and protection granted for all. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So it is a long time since we have met to continue the story of Rama, a most inspiring story. Just to remind you of some fundamental things from the very beginning. Of course, the author of this text is Valmiki. And we remember how Valmiki was a robber and a murderer and so on, was a very bad person, living a life really with good intentions, that was to feed his family. But he was accosted by the sage Narada, and it is through those efforts that he was taught meditation. And we remember how he was given the word Ram to repeat, a kind of mantra protecting thought, which is the very reverse of Mara. Mara, we know, even from Buddhism, tempted Buddha. So Mara represents all the bad characteristics of human behavior. And as he repeats it, a transformation takes place, and it comes out as Rama, Rama, Rama. And so therefore the meaning of Rama will be the exact opposite of all the obstacles which impede our progress toward our spiritual destiny, namely our own inner perfection. And for that reason, the process of it, that is Rama, embodies what we call dharma, a technical term, just to remind you, that has its roots in something that holds or binds things together. And we know the thing that binds things together is harmonious, a harmonious way of behaving, equanimity of mind, generosity of spirit, protecting the weak. And we also have to understand that Rama is a king. Well, of course, he's a prince, destined to be a king. And we understand how his kingship was taken away from him by these very deleterious and evil forces that are within us all, namely jealousy and pride. Namely, in one word, egoism, attention to the physical or the psychophysical as a unit, endorsing its stamp of reality on us. And this is our main obstacle that we have to overcome. And we also have to overcome it with the sharp tools or the weapons of discrimination, discernment, faith, and a certain passion that drives it all. A passion that is an expression of our inner urge for the highest perfect state, perfection itself. And so Rama represents to us a model, not only of all the virtues that we find in him, and all the other characters, all their virtues combined, we won't find any shortage of them. The beautiful motherhood and womanhood of Sita, the purity of mind that she has, born from a furrow, born from the earth, and all the major characters that we find, some with mixed characteristics, in other words, human. The Ramayana does not deny our humanity. It says, well, there are virtues, there are vices, but let's try and make virtues win. And Dharma also covers the whole aspect of morality and virtues and religion. So Rama was born as a protector because he was born into a military caste. And so his very nature is to exercise his military skill and power, even in the forest. And we can easily see how the forest is an analogy. Of course, it's a historical event, as I point out many times. It is part of that classification of itihasas, historical accounts, no doubt embellished over the years and made interesting from everyone. from a small child to an old person who sees in the story other levels and subtleties within it. And of course, there are many versions of the story of Rama, but we are taking the original Valmiki's version. And of course, many, many poetic other versions are there. Tulsidas' beautiful version, but stopping short of the last section, what do you call the Uttarakhanda. So the forest, of course, we're all walking through the forest. Forest is an unknown place, particularly in the evening. In the evening time, shadows start appearing and the imagination starts taking over. And many, many people want to get out of the darkness and threatening, sinister atmosphere of a forest at night where you can't find your way. But on the other hand, in the daytime, we'll see many beautiful things. The forest itself is a delightful paradise with beautiful trees and flowers and animals and deers. And Valmiki describes all of these things. So we have to start our spiritual journey where we are with all the tools that we have available to us, uniquely to us. Uniquely means all of us have different skills and talents, and these are there for us to employ and enjoy. So we're all walking through the forest, and one thing that is very, very apparent, that the forest has these dangers which are represented as demons called Rakshasas, and they also have forest hermitages, and the one threatens the other. What should a military person do with the capacity to protect? He should protect. And so where we left off was Rama's vow to protect the stages of the forest and their hermitages, to protect their spiritual practices by combating in a military way all the threatening demons. I think we also came across a particular episode of this, but we find there the company of a few rishis that Rama is in the company of, and we find that they are directing his steps toward a particular ashram belonging to Sutiksha or Sutikshna. And the area where we find all these ashrams are always an area of peace. They're a haven of peace and benediction. Even today, many people spend a number of dollars and euros and pounds to access remote places where they can find some peace of mind. The problem is, wherever we go, we're carrying our baggage with us, our inner psychological baggage. And unless we're able to reform the mental field, and unless we're able to employ the virtues that are embodied in this Rama, Lakshmana, Sita, and all the other characters, but principally Rama, and unless we're able to shift our attention, we won't find the benefit of our solitude. And for this reason, we seek the company of holy people. Holy company. Ramakrishna makes this one of 4 directions for the average household life. 4 directions: from time to time, seek solitude and keep the company of the holy. Now, your own thoughts can be holy or unholy, but it's a great advantage if there are people who have a level of realization and live their life in a sacred and sanctimonious way. So, keeping the company of the rishis is a great advantage to the 3 travelers. And we recall how the tragedy of going away, being pushed away for 14 years as they vow, and all the tragedy in the city, and all the tragedy in the relatives, with the relatives and the citizenry, all of that now gets left behind because this disadvantage, as it was seen, becomes a great advantage. It becomes a great blessing. it becomes a renewal of spiritual life, an opportunity for renewing thought, but at the same time, exercising one's duty, being a protector of the innocent, those who've taken a vow of non-violence. Now, of course, philosophically, or even from the yogic point of view, ahimsa, non-violence, is one of the great moral precepts all of us have to practice. But what does it mean? It means being non-violent in thought or word or deed. But it has nothing to do with carrying out our duty from a detached point of view. If it wasn't like that, we'd have no policemen. I always remember having a conversation with a college student, and they were familiar, of course, with all these stories. And they said, yeah, the problem with Krishna is he advocated violence. And it seems that Rama, Krishna, all of these people advocate violence. Should we not be peaceful? Is this not against our fundamental moral precept of non-injury, non-violence? And I said, no, Krishna is not advocating violence. Krishna and Rama, they're advocating performing duty, protecting the innocent. And then I gave that example. Do you think that there should be no policemen on the street or policewomen on the street? Do you think there should be no military or Ministry of Defense? And then, of course, they said, oh, yes, there should be. I said, okay, there's my point. And so Rama introduces himself wherever he goes to the venerable rishis, and he pays them homage, falling at their feet on each occasion. And the holy people lift them up and embrace him and others. And they also are wise enough to know that who he is, and his regal bearing tells it all. And so though the Dandaka region abounds with these ashrams and these holy places dedicated to peace and tranquility and meditation, in other words, dedicating to purifying the mind, all the ashrams realize that they are desolate places without some protecting force, without a king. And in Rama's arrival at these various ashrams, this need is fulfilled. And when the rishis make their observations in this way, then Rama in exile understands what the rishis are expecting from him. And in silence, he resolves to discharge his duty, as we should all do. This is our spiritual journey. What is the spiritual path for a student? Being a good student, being an intelligent and diligent student. For a housewife, being a dutiful housewife. For an engineer, being a good and efficient and intelligent engineer. From a military man's point of view, being a military person in the best way possible, that is to protect those who are innocent. And so this is the expectation, and the rishis are suggesting to Rama to choose one after the other of the ashrams in this locality, wherever their abodes are, and with mutual reverence and a newly charged vigor in Rama, understanding, oh, I have a duty to act as a protector in this forest. And so, in accordance with the arrangement, of course, Rama lives repeatedly in turn for varying periods in all of the ashrams. And he, at the same time, becomes absorbed in spiritual life in the company of these holy people. And it makes him forget the passage of time, so that ultimately 10 years passes in a blink. And this is where we will pick up the story, the 10-year period. So it is a new section in the story. It is called the Aranya Kanda. We recall how a beautiful episode was there involving Sita and involving her adopted mother, if you will, in the Sharamanga area, in their forest hermitage there, and how she takes him, she takes her, or she takes a kind of mother and a motherly approach there. And on the other hand, the wife of the sage is there looking after Sita. And so not only do we have the advantage of spiritual life, but also the psychological life, the emotional alienation that we can experience away from loved ones, family, and so on. But there's an aranya, that is a forest, kanda. And Valmiki begins with an episode that prepares us for a different turn of events amongst this idyllic life. And of course, unfortunately, the person who is suffering here will be Sita. The new responsibility of the prince destroying Rakshasas, demons who are molesting the rishis in the Dandaka forest. This is the context now. And in this context, a fear arises in Sita's heart. It's like a shadow cast by the events to come. And she is questioning. She's saying, why should you, she says to Rama and Lakshmana, who are properly to be just ascetics in the forest, why should you take on yourselves this task of protection? You have come here to fulfill a promise of your father, late king, and the duty of protecting the rishis belongs to the ruler who's actually reigning, namely Bharata. And it's not for you to be engaged in penance to protect the rishis. It is not for you, because you should be engaged in the spiritual life. You should be living the life of an ascetic. In other words, she's now stimulating some thought about the validity of his vow to protect the rishis. And then she's using an argument familiar to us in the Bhagavad Gita. She says, to kill anyone except in self-defense is opposed to the vows of an ascetic life. But you have rashly promised protection to all the rishis. And I wonder where this will lead us. She's feeling vulnerable. And so Sita is arguing in a soft and affectionate way. And while they are going from sage Sutikshna's ashram towards some other ashram in the Dandaka forest, and she's also saying, please, in this, what I'm telling you and what I'm saying, please bear with me, because I seem to be giving you some advice or some counsel, and I speak, but as a weak woman, out of my infinite love for you, I don't want to see you hurt. There's only 2 people plus Sita in the forest. How can one person, 2 people manage this huge task of protection? And you know what dharma is, she says, but men, it is said, are driven by desire into 3 kinds of sin. The one kind would be falsehood. The other would be lust and violence. These are the 3 things. Falsehood, living the life or telling things that are not true. And lust, allowing passions to take over the mind. And violence, yes, anger that comes as a result. And falsehood is unthinkable in one who, for truth's sake, has renounced a kingdom. Because you are exactly truthful when you did this. And this is here in the forest. If you are promising to protect everybody, are you able to do it? Is this not falsehood? And as for lust, do I not know that you will not allow even the thought of another woman to enter your mind? You are dedicated to me only in a bond of love. But I'm afraid of the 3rd kind of sin. What is the 3rd kind of sin? Should we kill one who doesn't attack us? And whether it is Rakshasa or anyone else, why should we kill anyone who leaves us alone? And you were in the hurry, I feel, to give your word about protecting everybody, the forest and the rishis. and to destroy the wicked. No doubt, it's the duty of a kshatriya, of a military person. But can that duty still cling to you when you have renounced the privileges that go with it? A kingdom, a palace, a full army, all the armaments that you are entitled to, because you've elected now the life of a recluse in the forest. What should you do? And the duties of kingship go with actual status. And but you're dressed in garments of bark, and your hair is matted like an ascetic, and you look like an ascetic, and you're living the life of ascetic, pure and simple life. Of course, you know best. I'm only asking to think well before undertaking anything. So this is Sita's concern and her love for Rama and Lakshmana. Rama's love and admiration, of course, for Sita rose all the more for her misgivings and for her counsel. So he's replying, "Indeed, my love," he said, "you speak like a true daughter of Janaka, very wise, realized royal sage. But Sita, didn't you once say to yourself that the weapons borne by kshatriyas are for protecting others? And when helpless people suffer persecution, how can I just stand by and let it happen? My nature is not like that. I'm a military person. And when we came here," he says, "the sages complained of their sufferings and entreated our protection. They were glad that there was some royal presence in the forest. They understood that this was what was missing. And they couldn't endure the cruelties of the Rakshasas, who looked on them as so much meat, as vulnerable people, and made a shambles of the hermitages and run riot in the forests. Did they not show us a great heap of bones to show what had been done? And you are the king's son. They say, our troubles will now end. We rely on you, as darkness before the rising sun. So you are our only refuge, just as you have taken refuge in the forest. Now we are taking refuge in you." This was their point of view. And so could we, princes, he continues here, their piteous appeal, and refrain from helping them? Every kshatriya, everyone has to do his duty. And that's a wonderful, wonderful lesson that is being taught in this Ramayana. Everyone should do their duty, not just the king alone. And you are, of course, solicitous for my safety. I understand that. And even granting that what you say is correct, I have given my word and I cannot go back. This truthfulness is there. This is the one characteristic of Rama that we see. Once you put the word out, you have to stick to it. And they have said, all the rishis have said, you are our refuge, and I have given my word to protect them. And a pledge that is given in this way can't be withdrawn. So what I have spoken cannot be unspoken. You and I must tread together, both, two sides of the same coin, the path of Dharma. How can we differ? So talking in this way, they went along the forest path discussing these things. And this conversation, it occurs like in the poem, like the cloud that precedes the storm, because it is the artistic creation, of course, of a changing atmosphere, not a random casting of all the beautiful, easy verses. This is realistic life. This is a pre-warning to something that is really going to impact them. Now, for 10 years now, Rama and Lakshmana and Sita have lived quietly among the rishis. This is the scene shift and change. And in the great Dandaka forest, there were a number, of course, of ashrams where the rishis lived, practicing their austerities, living their lives in self-abnegation. And so over these 10 years, we have to see what has happened. As I mentioned previously, the princes have spent a month in one ashram, 3 months in another one, maybe a year in a third one, as welcome and happy visitors. And of course, the forest was indescribably beautiful. We have to understand the scene where wild animals are going through with a sense of safety, not really having any threatening situation from those who are living in peace in the ashrams. And they come close to all the ashrams, and they don't fear that anyone is going to hunt them. So we find deer, we find bison, we find boars, we find elephants even, and we find birds in the trees and the creepers and beautiful blue water lilies. We get the idea. And everything is living there, are alive. And we find this in Valmiki's beautiful poetic descriptions of the scenes. So Rama was very happy for these 10 years. The joy of the association with the great and holy people being added to his joy in the quiet companionship of Lakshmana and his beloved Sita. And all those 10 years are disposed of in a small chapter in the story of Rama. And time is happily spent, and it seems short and it needs no length in recording. But after 10 years has passed, the end of their forest life is approaching, another 4 years to go, and Rama wishes to have the darshan of a particular sage. This is the sage called Agastya, and he lives in the south. And the sage was, just like Vishwamitra, famous throughout not just this world, but all the 3 worlds that exist. And it used to be said that if all the wisdom and spiritual merit between the Himalayas and the Vindhyas were put on one scale and Agastya sat on the other, the southern scale would go down by his weight. And there's also the story of Agastya's service during the wedding of Shiva and Parvati, and all the rishis had gone to Mount Kailash for the great event. And Agastya alone, staying in the south, maintained the balance of the earth, is how the story goes. Once the Vindhya mountains steadily grew towards the heavens and threatened to obstruct the sun's passage between the northern and southern hemispheres. And the deities grew frightened, and they approached the sage Agastya for help. And the sage stood before the mountain, which bent low in reverence before him. That's how prestigious was he, how great his spiritual accomplishments had been. Then he blessed it, saying, may you ever remain thus. And so the mountain stretches low and long even now, and that's how the story goes. Now, but there were 2 demons, 2 Rakshasas, Vatapi and Ilvala, and they gave a lot of trouble to the rishis. And it was Vatapi who had attained a boon. Now we have to understand all along, throughout all the stories, somebody gains a boon through meditation. It doesn't have to be meditation on God or meditation on the higher life. It doesn't have to be balanced with wisdom. It can be with passion. It simply means concentration. Concentrating on power will get you a boon. All these boons come from Brahma, and Brahma is the cosmic mind. Whatever we think, we get, for good or bad. That's the idea. And so he got a boon that no matter into how many pieces his body was cut up, they would all reunite, and his body would be whole and strong as before. And Ilvala, disguised as a brahmana, would go to the ashrama of one rishi after another and say, "Oh, learned one, go after my humble home and oblige me by accepting the consecrated food prepared for my mains." Now, very often evil is dressed up in this kind of garb, the garb of a holy person. And even today we'll find it. We'll find people who are living a fraudulent life and getting all the benefits of a holy person and misleading people. And from the 1960s onwards, or 1950s, no, let's say 1960s onwards, there's been a commercial movement toward gurus and so on and so forth. And we have also seen many, many scandals in many religions. Anyway, this is a contemporary story, therefore. On no account, according to ancient rule, in those days, could one refuse any invitation from a holy person. And the rishis therefore had to accept the invitation. And to them, Ilvala served as food for his brother Vatapi, who then and cooked. They were cannibalistic. And all these rishis. And after the unsuspecting guests had eaten the meat, the host would, according to custom, ask the guests, "Are you satisfied?" The answer would be, "Yes, we are content." And then Ilvala would shout, "Vatapi, Vatapi, come out." And at the call of Ilvala, Vatapi, reunited into life, would come out, tearing the bowels of the guests. Many rishis had to die in this way. Now we know how ancient this story was and how in remote areas they could easily have been. And that would be the historical indication of the story. Anyway, one day Ilvala tried to play this trick on Agastya, the great sage. And as usual, Vatapi entered Agastya's entrails as meat. And Agastya, of course, knew this, but he was a devotee of Ganapati. Ganapati removes every single obstacle. And Ganapati is also another version of the Logos of cosmic mind. That's what makes him the Lord of all creatures. The embodiment of this powerful sound movement, Om. I often, when discussing Ganesha or Ganapati, that he's not only the removal of obstacles, because like every elephant, he has a trunk, but he's also the embodiment of the sound symbol Om. And if you look carefully from the side, you'll see in a tusk, in a curve of a trunk, the Devanagari combined script, A or coming out as Om. So anyway, he was a great devotee of Ganapati and had obtained the power to digest the Rakshasa. "Are you satisfied?" asked Ilvala. "Yes, I am satisfied," answered Agastya. "I've eaten my fill." And Ilvala shouts, "Vatapi, come out." That's the system. And Agastya, laughing, said, "Vatapi has been digested, my host. He can't come out." "What?" cried Ilvala. "Have you killed my brother?" And he rushed against Agastya. And the sage opens his eyes in indignation, and the Rakshasa was reduced to ashes. Such a power he had. No Rakshasas would therefore come near Agastya. Now, we have to understand also, even in modern times, somebody who is pure in heart, somebody who is close to the divine, somebody whose mind is continuously tuned into that, a great Swami, a great sage, perhaps, if anybody goes against him, then it's equivalent of inviting a curse on themselves. And it's not surprising, therefore, that misfortune comes to that person because they were steeped in harm, but they're coming across a brick wall. It's like saying, "I'm going to conquer the wall," rushing headlong into it and hitting your head against the wall. The only suffering person will be the head-butting person. That's all. They'll get a nice headache from it. So anyway, this is the sage Agastya. Now Rama first goes to the ashrama of Agastya's younger brother, and he's obtaining his blessings before visiting Agastya himself. and proceeding in a southerly direction, he approaches Agastya's place, and Rama notices the brightness of the whole region. Because where this holy person is, any holy person is, the blessing, they have a blessing attitude. They're beaming blessings in all directions, everywhere to everyone, and it transforms an environment. So Rama is noticing the transformation in this whole region, and the birds and the animals are playing about with no fear. And the brahmanas, the priests, are gathering flowers for worship. And he tells Lakshmana to go in advance and announce him to the sage. And Lakshmana meets one of the disciples of the sage, and he sends words through him. You see, Ramachandra, son of Dasaratha, has come with his brother, namely myself, and his wife, to seek the great sage's blessings. So Agastya hears of this and warmly welcomes the princes. And he says, yes, I've heard that you have about your coming to dwell in Chitrakuta, and I was looking forward to your visit. The end of your exile, of course, is approaching, another few years. So stay here, please, during what remains of it in peace. This place is free from the fear of Rakshasas. No Rakshasa will ever come near here. And Rama answers, oh, I'm happy to receive your blessing. I thank you for your gracious welcome. But I've promised protection to the rishis in Dandaka, and now that I have received your blessings, I must return to that forest because no demon will come near you, and so I have to go to the area where they are threatening. And Agastya anyway answers, yes, what you say is right. In other words, this is a whole endorsement of his promise. Where Sita has this reservation, here is the answer. And then the sage gives to Rama the bow made by Vishwakarma for Vishnu himself. Vishwakarma is the kind of architect of all the heavenly palaces, and an inexhaustible quiver, as well as a sword. These divine instruments he's given. And he blesses him, saying, okay, Rama, go and destroy the Rakshasas. You are one person, but you need these celestial weapons. And with these weapons, which of long ago Vishnu gave to me, I'm giving to you. Vishnu is the divine in the role of protector, making a protective field of his domain, which is the entire universe. Vishnu, the all-pervading entity, is really the ancient word or the ancient concept for the whole of the universe, which is not separate from the divine, which is the divine formed in a body. We find evidence of this in the most ancient passages in the Rig Veda. The Purusha Suktam is there, indicating the whole universe is a divine body. So Agastya advises the prince to spend the rest of his exile at Panchavati. Panchavati, may God bless you, he says, and take good care of Sita, please, who for love of you cheerfully submits to all the hardships of the forest, and to which she was not born, and she's not accustomed to these things. Women are by nature fond of a little bit of comfort because they require, they're softer in terms of their physical body and so on, and averse to hardships, but no such weakness is found in Sita or any other woman, because women are in their own way stronger than men. She is like Arundhati, and wherever you are, Ramachandra, with Lakshmana and Sita by your side, the place will always be filled with beauty. But Panchavati is itself a beautiful spot, and Sita will love to live there. She'll live there, secure in the protection of both of you. And the fruit and roots are there in abundance. So stay there on the bank of the Godavari River. The period of your exile is coming to an end, almost, and you'll soon fulfill your father's plighted word. So, like Yayati, Dasaratha is served by his eldest son. So now we come to a different episode. This is the background to it. The princess and Sita follow the Sage Agatsya's instruction, and they take the way to Panchavati. And on the way, they meet a huge figure perched on a big tree. And they take it to be a Rakshasa. Who are you? Naturally, Rama asks. And he asks in a deliberately angry tone, threatening tone. But the vulture that is sitting there answers in a voice full of mildness and affection, "My child, I am your father's aged friend." Then he proceeds to tell his story. His name, of course, is Jatayu. Jatayu was the brother of Sampati, the son of Aruna, the dawn deity, who was the brother to Garuda. And Garuda, we know, is the Vahana, the vehicle for Vishnu. It's like an eagle vehicle that Vishnu rides on. What's the meaning? You see, Vishnu has to have a vehicle, Brahma has to have a vehicle, all the deities have to have a vehicle, because by themselves, they can't go anywhere or do anything. And the vehicle then is the funneled means, if you like, the materialistic means by which things get accomplished. We have to go back to the Sankhya system of 24 categories, where we understand that from cosmic mind come 5 varieties of waves called tanmatras. And these tanmatras are like the great angels that make the crooked path straight for us. And it is thought that is cosmic mind's movement that allows them to combine and recombine until they condense as the world that we find in front of us. And so all of this is vehicular. Time and space is vehicular. And the energy that is dispersed in different ways, this is vehicular. Anyway, he says, when you leave Sita alone and go hunting in the forest, I shall be looking after her safely because I'm sitting in the tree and watching over everything. And the prince was very pleased and accepted the offer of this great bird with gratitude. And all of the party then proceed on their journey. Now Rama was thrilled by the beauty of the Panchavati. He gratefully offered praise in his thoughts to Agastya for recommending this particular spot to them. And he tells Lakshmana, we can build our ashram, our own ashrama here, and enjoy our stay here for any length of time, even to the end of our sojourn here in the forest. And those hills are near, and yet not too near. And look at the herds of deer which are here, and the trees with their flowers, and the sweetly singing birds, and the river, and the clean sand, everything is beautiful. So Lakshmana, choose for us a good site and build a cottage, please. And Lakshmana, of course, does as he's told, and he constructs a beautiful, beautiful ashram. Now Valmiki, in his telling of this, pauses to explain some of the skill and swiftness of Lakshmana's workmanship. And he describes in detail how the mud walls were raised, how the thatch roof was made, and Rama admires Lakshmana's handiwork enthusiastically. He says, you are more than a father to me. And he sheds tears of love and joy. And we too can also pause to think how the noble Prince Lakshmana acquires this skill. And we may infer that in these days, education, even of princes, included a knowledge of some practical things, practical realities of life, and a development of manual skills, such as can enable one to collect materials from the forest and then have a kind of engineering mind where you assemble it and put a neat cottage for oneself, something that will protect you from rainfall, something that will be hard enough not to be blown away by winds, and yet using the very raw materials that the forest has to offer. Such a great ingenuity is there. What is it philosophically for us? When I say philosophically, I'm meaning from a practical, spiritual point of view. What practical application is there for us? We all have our individual skills and talents, a kind of individual design that gives us an individual purpose in this drama of life where we're living for a blink of an eye, as it were. And employing those skills and then integrating with the skills of other people make for this harmony that we call dharma. So our own particular skills and talents technically is called swadharma, our own particular contribution. And we do it. And how do we do it? We do it with the technique of karma yoga. That is, we do it for the greater glory of the divine. We do it to contribute our part, and our particular contributions add to the overall good, the overall totality. These are divinely dispensed to us. And this is our offering for the greater good, for the service of the whole of humanity. When students come to me with the idea, what is a good career path, I get them to try to identify what are your particular skills and talents, something that you know about or something that you're interested in that is more than any other thing. Then how can I employ these skills and talents for the good of everyone? Everyone is an all-inclusive term. It means me as well, everybody. And you'll find that this is something like a jigsaw piece fitting into the overall total harmony of the time and place you happen to be in. And this is called swadharma, your particular contribution, done with the aim of purifying your own mind. And the purpose of purifying your mind is this goal of moksha, freedom. And we have to use the local materials that we have. We won't have to go looking for anything. We won't have to go looking for our purpose somewhere else. Let's give an example. Somebody who is socially minded and wants to do some activity for the good of someone else, may be in a foreign place. Now, arriving in Ireland, I realized, and knowing Irish people also back in Zimbabwe, that the Irish people have a tremendous social conscience. They are always willing to do charitable work. They have a very open heart and a generosity of spirit. And there's also can go with a romantic idea. Let me be a missionary or let me be a volunteer in a foreign country somewhere, not realizing that where they are, there's work to do. In severe winter in this country, in Dublin itself, there will be homeless people. There will be hungry people. There will be people who are suffering in the cold. There will be people who are not so well off, even in a supposedly third world country. And it streams to me in many countries. In America, for example, in cities, there's an inner city where there is suffering and still there's poverty. Amazingly, in 2022, the age of communication and technology, there are still people who are suffering in third world conditions in first world countries. And also we find throughout the world, there are people in Africa, in Asia, in South America, and other places who are living in primitive conditions still. And so there's no shortage of people to contribute our wonderful gifts and talents to. But where we are now, that's where we can start. We don't have to look for foreign causes. There's enough in our environment. We can't change the entire world. That's clear. Even if you look at the news, you'll find that there are countries neglected. Maybe 10 people die in a car accident or something, or a disaster somewhere, neglecting the fact that in a place like the Democratic People's Republic of the Congo, millions of people have died over the last 10, 15 years in terrible, terrible conditions. So naturally, we're inclined to localize our concerns. When we take the global view, we see there is much work to be done, not to change anything, because our philosophy tells us we cannot help anybody, but all we can do is we can worship, we can provide our skills and talents out of compassion and go to the next stage with a penetrating vision of adoration of the Lord dressed up in this form. Anyway, in the ashram at Panchavati, Rama and Sita, they live happily, lovingly served by Lakshmana. But one morning, in the early winter, the three of them, they go, as usual, to the Godavari River for a bathing and also offering morning prayers. In the morning, we can have a mini version of this. When we bathe, when we have a shower, or when we take a bath, we can also take it as, using it as the opportunity for purification. We all feel better afterwards, having cleansed the body. And this is an opportunity where we can also say our morning prayers. Anyway, they say their morning prayers and they fetch the water for the day's needs. And they walk, conversing about the beauty of the season. And Lakshmana all of a sudden thinks of Bharata and how he would then be busy performing the ceremonies appropriate to the month. And he says, Bharata is entitled to live in ease, but he's taken on himself a life of hardship, living outside the city. Because we live a life of hardship in the forest, he's also doing it there. My heart is full of sorrow for him, because even in this cold weather, poor Bharata, no doubt, is eating sparingly and sleeps on the bare floor. That was his commitment. And this cold morning, he too is probably doing the same. He's walking toward the Sarayu River. And how fortunate we are to have such a noble brother. This is how he's thinking. Pure in mind and speech and conduct, renouncing all pleasures, he lives a life of austerity, just for our sake. What beautiful brotherly love. And is exactly like our dear father, and quite the opposite of his own mother. How could so cruel a woman as Kakeyi bear so good a son? This is the line of his thinking. And Rama stops him because he's vocalizing this. Talk as much as you like of Bharata and our father, but stop condemning Kakeyi. You see, if we live in the past continuously, bring up resentments, even if it was 5 minutes ago, we're poisoning our own mind and poisoning the environment with it. So stop condemning Kakeyi. All that you say of Bharata is true, and my thoughts too today go to him in love. And how long yet to see, how I long to see him again. But when shall we have that pleasure, Lakshmana? When shall we four brothers live together again? Bharata's loving words are still sweetly ringing in my own ears. And so thinking longingly of home and Bharata, they all bathed in the Godavari River on that early winter morning. And as they do so, they offer oblations to their ancestors because we're all here because of the aspirations of XY chromosome ancestry going back. And so we have to honor our ancestors, our divine line, if you like, of progeny that has brought us to this where we are now. And so prayers to the ancestors, thankfulness to them, and prayers to the sun, who's our life giver, because the early morning sun, that's what we do. And Rama rose transfigured like the Lord Shiva and returns to the ashram with Sita and Lakshmana. Now, all their morning duties are now over, and they sit whiling the hours with wistful talk of the old days and tales of long ago. And I'm preempting next week's session. then and we link it in, of course, with the theme of Christmas, because, of course, next Saturday will be Christmas Eve, as I understand it. And we can link the two subject matters. But as they're talking in this way, they come across a Rakshasa woman, and she sees them. And this is Surpanaka. Surpanaka is the villain of the whole story, Ravana's sister. Surpanaka is there, and we pick that story up about a conversation with him and how the whole issue of Sita's abduction occurs from here. So we leave the story off at Surpanaka's arrival, and we pick this tale up later. And it's a beautiful story, this Ramayana. Every time we meet and talk about it, we can see what a profound beauty, which is a historical account, of course, embellished, no doubt, with philosophical and practical undertones. And we leave it off for today. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. May Rama bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji. Namaste.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swami. Varma.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Okay. All good.